Hello, friends. How's it going? It's Michael Parker, and welcome back. This past week, another story emerged of a death of a young man in Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. And for those who don't know, since 2022, 38 bodies have been found in or around the lake, and 30 of those bodies were male. Over 60% of them were between the ages of 30 and 49 years old. To discuss this, we have a returning guest and my friend, William Ramsey of William Ramsey Investigates. He's the author of numerous books and documentaries, including this one, The Smiley Face Killers, Investigating Suspicious Water Deaths of College-Aged Men in the U.S. and the World. William, welcome back.
Mike, great to be with you. Thanks for the invite.
So last week when I saw this, you were the first person that I thought of, and I sent you the story. You had already posted it. Somehow I missed it on Twitter. And we have the story coming out of Austin. It was a 17-year-old student. His name was Irawamiri Shote. He was 17 years old, and he was visiting his family from Richardson, Texas, where he goes to high school. He was on a family paddleboarding trip with his sister and I believe his father and maybe one or two other people. The story goes that he stepped off of the board and then disappeared. Now, the Austin police and responders are saying that he probably stepped off onto a shelf, an underwater shelf, and he disappeared from there. What were your thoughts on this, William?
There's a lot of bodies in Lady Bird Lake. There's a lot that aren't being reported. There's survivors that aren't on that list, too. So that list was from Daily Mail. But that's a suspicious case. But the ones that are even more suspicious are the ones that where people are out partying or whatever and then end up in the lake. So there is, and it's actually been reported on major news stories. Daily Mail is the UK, and then they were talking about it recently. Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan were talking about it on one of the number one podcasts in the world about they think there's a serial killer. So everybody thinks there's a serial killer in Lady Bird except for the Austin authorities.
I listened to your interview yesterday with Jim Smith, and I want to give him a shout out because he's done excellent work from the beginning along with yourself on this. And, to be clear to the audience, I think in this particular case, it is an accident, but I don't really know. But that if there's any good thing that happened as a result of this, is it's once again shining a light on this ongoing tragedy that's occurring in Austin.
It's incredible. There's a lot of bodies. There's a lot of names. They won't divulge the names too. So I think that, in my opinion, they are covering it up, in my opinion. And I think that's the way it is in a lot of these urban areas. But I think they're deliberately not divulging names and cause of death. So there was a young man. His name was Eli Blau. He was from Israel. And he ended up right near the mayor's office, kind of adjoining the lake. And they lied about it and said there was a young man with a heart attack. And then they changed the story to suicide. And his parents don't believe the story at all. But that's what the public picked up. And he's still unidentified. He's unidentified specifically in that Daily Mail article that was put out in the UK. So, and there's like all these unidentified males, but some people know the names. There's another couple other names I know that I don't need to divulge, but they don't even encompass two guys who were brutally beat up and left by the lake. One's name is Christopher Pugh, P-U-G-H, and another's, I think, Tim Jones. Jones was his last name. Both ended up in the hospital, but those aren't included in the story. So it's not like much of the other Smiley Face killings phenomena and the way it plays out in media. They're not seeing the whole picture.
William, this is our third episode together that we're doing on this subject, and I would encourage my listeners to go back to the previous episodes. Both have Smiley Face Killer in the title. And you have, in this book, you cover, I believe, around 370 some odd cases. And just for the people who haven't seen it, kind of explain what is the through line, what is it about these cases, what are the similarities?
I think that they describe it right at the intro. I think that fits the profile of what's known as the Smiley Face Killers. Is a younger man who either goes out at a bar, separates from his friends, disappears. There's huge media, interest. The family doesn't know. It's usually out of character. And then later to be found dead in water over a period of time that doesn't make sense. Usually, if people drown, they're found fairly recently, fairly close to where they were last seen. Oftentimes, people are seen going in the water. None of the cases that I covered, people saw them go in the water. That's what kind of distinguishes this. I think it's meant to look like a stage to drowning. But this Smiley Face Killers, it got its name from the two, like I think we explained it before, but from the two guys who first started investigating them. Yeah, I think that basically covers the kind of modus operandi of these kind of deaths.
And Austin, Texas is my home state, and I love the city of Austin. I've not been there in many, many years. But this troubles me, and it troubles a lot of people greatly. And the police department is saying that these deaths are unrelated. But listen, if you go on to forums, if you look at the comment sections of many YouTube videos on this subject, this is an open secret, not only amongst the people of Austin, but the U.S. People know that something is going on here, and I am willing to concede that some of them were accidents, but the sheer numbers of these and the similarities, it's unmistakable that something very, very dark and tragic is happening.
I agree. And it's becoming more prevalent for people to talk about it. There's a lot of really good online people on YouTube who've made videos, who've been down to Lady Bird Lake. And I included those when I was talking to Jim. I talked about a couple. One guy's a paranormal investigator. There's another guy who went down there. He had a Portuguese last name, like Oliveira or something like that. But the millions and millions of listens, like I wish that I had a million listens on one of my shows. But also people are kind of like, it's in the zeitgeist. I totally agree with you. They may not see the kind of wide angle, 2 steps back view that it's happening in Chicago, New York, New Hampshire, cases in Princeton, New Jersey. So they may not see it, but they definitely see that in these different locales, something's going on, particularly in Austin, which is very strange because it wasn't on the map for like serial killings, as Texas especially. So something in the character of the city of Austin and Texas has changed very rapidly within 10, 20 years. So it's really remarkable.
And a lot of people are commenting how they believe that this is the work of perhaps one serial killer. They're calling it the Rainy Street Ripper. Of course, we both believe that this is the work of multitudes of people in different places for reasons that we do not know, and we don't know how these organizations would be connected if they are connected. Returning to the story of this young man, he was there with his family, and he gets off of the paddleboard and then he disappears. And once again, I don't know what happened. And the only thing that's good about this is it puts more light on the subject. I heard, or I saw on Jim Smith's Twitter, that now also a body has been found in a submerged car in Austin near or on the campus of University of Texas.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, it just like more and more stories keep coming out. So I think it was a woman, though. I'm not really sure. So,
yes,
but it's like, what's going on? And there's other cases too that aren't even in Lady Bird Lake. There's one that I include in my book, a guy by the name of Randy Lexvold, who died. I think 6th Street is the main kind of, next to Rainy, 6th Street is kind of the main tourist thing. He was found off of 6th Street, really with incredible amount of injuries and a very strange kind of drawings and graffiti around where he died. But they just covered it up and washed it off as an accident. Or they didn't call it a murder, I think, in Austin. But there's other things that are happening around Austin that are very gruesome. Yeah.
And in one of the previous episodes, we talked about the presence of GBH and other drugs being found in the bodies of these things. And, these days we often tell the women and ladies and girls in our life, please watch your drink in clubs. But no, everybody has to watch their drink at this point. And I also implore anyone who's going out and partying, whether it's Austin or anywhere else, please stay together if you can. If one of your friends says that they would like to go home, or do not let them go alone.
Yeah. Totally agree. I followed one of the cases. I think we might have talked about it, was Riley Strain.
Yes.
But his family has a suit, and they are filed a civil suit against some of the establishments and some of his friends for letting him wander off alone. So you can actually have very serious consequences if somebody wanders off alone and has misfortune, whether they falls under the SFK, or they hurt themselves or become a paraplegic. So it's really in your interest. It's very selfish to help out your friends, because you could end up being sued, and you don't want, nobody wants that. So
No. And, I'm not trying to pick on the cops, but I mean, look, another interesting thing that I heard in your interview yesterday when I was listening to it, it was brought up that the Austin police had made their police scanner private.
right.
And so this morning I was like, you know what, I'm going to look into this. And apparently on April 22nd of 2024, the Austin Police Department publicly transitioned from open air analog police scanners to an encrypted digital radio system. And so this makes live patrol and dispatch channels inaccessible to the public. And they are not the only city to have done this. I believe that Denver also did it, and a couple of other cities. So this is something that is happening now. When I heard it on your interview, that immediately causes us to be suspicious. The cops will say that we're doing this for the safety of our policemen and women, and we're trying to do it to keep from emitting information that might help an offender. But still, it doesn't look great.
It doesn't look great, but it happened right after the Eli Blau case. So I know a guy on the street who does great work. His name is Jamie. You can find him under Dash. He covers a lot of homeless issues and this kind of smiley face killing. And it's like he's taking pictures, or he's on the street, like literally. And it was right after this Blau thing where the report went out, people went down to the river like good citizen journalists. And I think that that's why, in my opinion, why they started encrypting their communications, is they want to keep things secret. They want to keep things hush hush. And I think in part it's because of these Rainy Street deaths. So, and it's not good for the public. The public needs that transparency and all that insight, because the cops are very, very much stonewall the public on a lot of information regarding these cases and other cases where I think that they should be more forthcoming regarding their information. I feel like they have kind of like a siege mentality, and especially in those kind of urban areas. So I think it's unfortunate. Yeah,
It is, and it's being left to citizen journalists like yourself and Jim and others to sort through all this and try to make some sense of it. And once again, it's an open secret. People know that this is happening. People speak about it. Some people have personal anecdotes that you'll read in the comments. I don't know why the Austin PD can't let out some information, but I think you're right. I think it has to do, they're trying not to scare the public. They're trying not to diminish tourism. We have South by Southwest there in the spring. I mean, this is a University of Texas there, huge university, huge entertainment capital. So it helps their economy. But at some point, people will stop coming because this story continues to spread, and there's no resolution in sight.
very true. But like you said, those stories that people are telling are remarkable, because people feel like they've come up against these kind of things. They've been found themselves in water. They've blacked out. There have been stories about coming up as a group. So some of these deaths do happen, but there's probably, like other stories of serial killers, where somebody's come in encounter with somebody like Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy. Like, there's stories of survivors. And there's a lot of stories of survivors of people who've been drugged or strange things, and the retellings of these stories. There's so many. It's really incredible. People who blacked out and been found in like water or in strange areas. So really weird things are happening in urban areas. And there is an epidemic of drugging and GHB that are associated with other lesser, not murder, but stealing and thieves and people getting taken home and having all their belongings stolen. So, and a lot of sex crimes, and a lot of the sex crimes aren't male on female, it's male on male too. So people really, things are getting really rough out there. They're getting rougher.
You talk about in your book, and it's been a few years since I read it in its entirety, but one of the things I was looking at again today was, when you first started looking into this years ago, I believe it was 2017 when you started, or 2016, you thought, like many would probably think, that this is some form of urban myth. But what was it that made you turn the corner and made you realize this is real and ongoing?
It's a good question. I really thought it was an urban myth. I thought it was like, Sasquatch or something like that. But, and I had heard it on, one of the earlier journalists, she was a female, and she was on Coast to Coast talking about it. So I had remembered this kind of story in my consciousness, kind of vaguely. But then I was online, I was on Facebook and kind of on social media. I was intrigued because I kept seeing this smiley face in culture. It's really ubiquitous. If you keep your eye out, it shows up in a lot of serial killer movies, very strangely. But the first case that I followed was something, and that kind of was when I started following Jim Smith. It was 2016, Columbus, Ohio, and his name was Joey LaBute. And I heard the story of him disappearing. So I've seen this happen like almost 20, 30 times. Jim's seen them more where they disappear to later be found. Like he almost can predict they're going to be found in water based upon the fact patterns. But Joey LaBute was mine. I was like, if this guy gets found in water, I'm going to freak out. And it had the same fact pattern, young guy, homosexual, on homosexual apps like Grindr or something, with his friends, talking, just walked out of the bar and disappeared. Car was left there, like nobody ever saw him again. And then 19 days later, he was found in the Scioto. I just published my mini documentary I did about him almost 10 years ago. It's hard to believe. But then he was found in the Scioto's Scioto River in a place obviously previously searched, in a place that somebody would have found him. Like it wasn't like some kind of remote, waterway 50 miles away. It was close to downtown where people jog and hike and do all this stuff. So how did this happen? And the interesting thing about LaBute, which I always retell, is that he disappeared during the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic, which is a bodybuilding competition that happens every year in Columbus. So all these people are coming in, traveling and flying in private jets, a lot of strange things like that. Anyway, so that was really the first thing. So then it like disabused my mind of like, this is just some, guys having a campfire story. This is happening. Then I started researching and kind of looked into Gannon and Gilbertson, the case studies in forensic drownings. And then it was on. So then I just started seeing case after case after case, like literally falling. Zach Moore, Kelleher out of Boston. And then I'm like, wow, this is a slaughter. This is incredible. Like it's really happening. And then just to see it really go on, I called it the Chicago Rampage because there were like 10 deaths in a year, a couple of years ago. And then Austin is just this incredible hotspot that's really outdone almost every other place in the world is this. But it still happens in little things. There's a story in the UK, Bath and Bristol, which are basically west of London. There's a couple cases there. There's been random cases in New Jersey, close to Manhattan, New Hampshire. There were 2, Quebec. So it's one in Vancouver. Portland had I think they've had 9 people found in a river, like men and women. So there's some kind of serial killer activity there. So it's a real thing. Like the reason I wrote the book, for people who haven't heard our earlier 2 conversations, is that it's memorialized. The book is actually a history of the study of this phenomenon going back 20, 25 years. So the cases they're memorialized in time. So you can see, okay, this is a new case. This is 2015, 2020, 2024.
I did not hear the Rogan Tim Dillon interview that you guys referenced, but you said that Tim Dillon had brought this up. The reason I bring this in, first of all, that's the biggest podcast in the world, and it's coming out of Austin. Right. I don't know that you could get much bigger a platform to discuss this subject. Did he give any details, or did they just talk about it briefly?
Well, they were kind of joking around about the story because they think there's a serial killer, and they were kind of joking around like, how are they getting away with it? And they actually kind of used an interesting word, like somebody's broken, like they get a thrill out of killing. And it kind of ties in actually strangely into my research into my first documentary in 2017, because I used a screenshot from a video called Broken. I don't know if they did it intentionally, subconsciously. It was in the ether or something, but they use this thing. I'm wondering if I can find this video of them, but I don't know if I can play it. But it is remarkable that they brought it up. Like in their conversations, like I think Dylan's been like on Rogan like 8 or 9 times, like many, many times. And they cover a lot of different topics. It's kind of a free flowing conversation. So I think that's kind of kind of interesting, but yeah.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because I would think that would be just one more thing that puts additional pressure on law enforcement, local government, and Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, to sort this out, because this is no longer hushed conversations between conspiracy theorists or people on the internet. This is something that has now been spoken about in a public forum about the city that they're broadcasting from.
Right. No, I mean, it is incredible. Like, you would think that the government, I think that the insight right now is just to cover everything up. That's the government's view, and try to handle it. And it's the worst way. It's terrible to the public because the public needs to know it. So it's a very strange thing. And like, Jim was always tagging kind of like the guys in Austin, the Garza, who's the DA there, and some of these other characters, and Abbott, and he gets no response. So he's kind of like screaming kind of into the void, so to speak. I'll email it to you real quick.
I think they would cover up a murder.
That's sweet.
If you murdered 3 people, I think the Austin PD would go, whatever, man. He's doing a lot. They'd bring that mayor, that guy, and he'd go, what? They go, yeah, the suspect's Joe Rogan. He was standing over the bodies. They'd go, are you out of your fucking mind? Drive him home right now. Drive that man home.
If I was in waist deep in Rainy Street, drowning a party goer,
they don't care.
Bro, they still don't want to admit that there's a serial killer.
You're the tourism board. There's something's up.
There's a serial killer.
Something's going on.
I believe there's a serial killer.
And what are they doing? They're luring people to that bridge, and then
it's not hard. People like to go to the bridge. You just got to look out for the
so
bushes.
Weird. I guess it's such a high to kill someone. It's to me, I'm like, what do you get out of it? But I guess the people that are doing it like it.
They're broken. There's broken people. And then some broken people do meth, and some broken people drown guys who like to party.
It's just an interesting conversation. This guy's reaching like 10 million people on like one podcast. Like, it's the potency and like the amount of people who are getting something off of this is incredible.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you probably already listened to Rogan, but my point to all of this is it is now part of the public conversation. And while neither you nor I think that this is a single serial killer, because if it were, then you would have to explain the similarities in all of these other various cities going back to the late 90s, which would be extremely improbable, I think.
Agreed. I totally agree. It's something weird is going on. Something involving multiple people, something involving possibly women. Like it's and some possibly some of this other stuff. I don't know. Did we talk about Sloan Bella on our last conversation?
I know Sloan.
Okay. I think I mentioned her in our last conversation. She thinks some of the people in the bars are involved, that they're actively drugging people.
And I think that you and I discussed that because you're almost left. And I know Sloan. I haven't talked to her in a while. She's a friend. I love her work, and she certainly says exactly what she thinks. But I think you and I also discussed that we believe that as well, because in many cases, these people are leaving not only just bars, but extremely well-known, heavily frequented bars at times, like you mentioned, the bodybuilding contest. But when major concert stars are in town, the Riley Strain story that you mentioned, I was at a convention just recently unrelated to this subject, and I don't think that I knew we were going to do this show yet, but somebody was asking me about various shows that I've done, and I mentioned this, and the person just right off the bat said Riley Strain. I was like, exactly.
He's probably one of the best recorded cases of this in recent times, like the most public, I mean, really an international case, the most well recorded, and the cover up is incredible. They found his body and just said he drowned, and that was it. That's all the public said. Like, okay, this is it. 2 weeks later, where was he? Where was he for 2 weeks? Where's his phone? Nothing. Like, oh, it's done. Just wash the hands of it. It's incredible. It's like a mob boss in an urban center. Like, oh, like, well, there's no investigation. Where's the inquest? Where's the thing? It's off the charts. But yeah, Riley Strain is something else. He was in town. It's kind of like Nashville is kind of like the new LA in a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And, it was the guy who sings I Got Friends in Low Places was in town. Yeah.
Is that Garth Brooks?
Garth Brooks, yeah.
Okay.
That's a whole nother show, but the
reason I say that is I'm sorry to interrupt. The reason I mentioned Garth Brooks is somebody had mentioned that in the comment section of one of the videos that I had watched. And there was a point I was going to, and I'm forgetting, but back to Lady Bird Lake, having not been to Austin since 2008, I was wondering, I wanted to know some things about Lady Bird Lake. And Lady Bird Lake is a portion of the Colorado River that is dammed. And so it's, man-made somewhat. And that lake, since the 1960s, it has been forbidden to swim in it. And I guess 2 children had passed away in the 60s. So they said, no more swimming in Lady Bird Lake. And yet paddleboarding, kayaking, big sport down there. And I've seen several people in the last couple of days talk about that. And I guess also right now they're doing a big kind of purification of Lady Bird Lake. There's an outgrowth of algae. So they're doing all these things. It's right there in the center of town. I don't know how you would keep people out of that lake. And even with the installation of temporary lighting, of signage, of fencing, I don't know what else you do, but clearly something has to be done.
Yeah, it's also not very deep. My understanding, it's only 6 feet deep average. So it's not like it's like super some kind of like chasm or something. But it's very mysterious how people can drown in that too. And that's the whole mysterious thing about all these drownings is they're really not drownings. They're just body dumps. People are putting them in there. And then it's easier for people to justify it as drownings.
In some of these cases, they found the bodies without water in the lungs, if I remember from your book.
That's Riley Strain too. That was like what the medical examiner told somebody. It hasn't been, I don't think it's validated in paper to my knowledge, but that's what they said, which is like, and then, it's a dry drowning. They just still call it drowning again. Like, really? It's rare. It's like less than 5% of so-called drowning. These are incredible events. Like, it's still ongoing. There's 38 bodies in Austin in the last 3 years. And the government isn't telling the public this line that the public has to figure it out themselves. It's incredible.
One of these articles that I saw just a couple of days ago was actually in Newsweek, and then Newsweek posted an update, if I can find it here. Basically, they're saying, oh, by the way, it wasn't 30 some odd bodies, was actually 19 because the remainder of the bodies were found in or around the lake. But that doesn't really matter because they're all in that vicinity. So there's not really a way that you could diminish the impact of this, especially for the families of the deceased.
Yeah, no, it's still suspicious. I mean, there's other things happening in Texas, guys. Houston, Corpus Christi, outside of Dallas, there was one case. I mean, you want to talk about a small world. I have a family friend whose pool guy's best friend was the father of a guy who disappeared about 40 miles east of Dallas. So like I literally ran into somebody who's still searching. It was really interesting. I mean, I didn't want to tell him all I knew. I just said, oh, he disappeared at a bar at 2 a.m. Have you checked the water? I was like, have you checked any water? Oh, we're still searching. We're still looking for him. I don't think they found him yet. I forgot his name. So it's like some of these places that were untouched by this phenomenon are being touched now. And it ties into this whole thing about like transportation and internet and underground message boards and kink and FetLife and all this strange stuff. Like, did we talk about Scarlett Blake? I don't remember.
We did.
That's one of the cases. Like the person who told the police about Scarlett Blake in Oxford, UK, was from Texas. And then you had this whole Zizzian cult or whatever.
Yes.
Which is a bunch of transsexual murderers.
And
like
that was
literal murder cult.
That was here in the States on the West Coast, I believe. Weren't they out of...
There was one victim on the West Coast, one in New Hampshire, one in Philadelphia. So it's like they had connections to all these. One guy went and killed his parents. And then there was a border agent or somebody in New Hampshire. And then I think one of their landlords in California. That's what they got caught for.
Right.
And they have this kind of dark worldview, almost like the Order of Nine Angles, and that they're set aside and special, and almost like the other people who aren't them are like mundanes. Right. That's my understanding. So it's very creepy, and it kind of ties into this very scary transsexual. There's a correlation, and you'll never talk about it in public. It's too politically correct to say that, but there's a correlation between some of these transsexuals and violence. They have a tendency to violence there, and some of these people are very angry. And I've done a section called Transition to Kill. Like these transition people, if you don't talk to them the right way, they lash out in violence.
Well, and the other thing, and we may have discussed this the last time, but here's the problem. And then you get into the possibility of copycat crimes. And what city does not have a body of water somewhere within it, right?
Right.
I mean, almost every city has some body of water, reservoir, that something like this could occur. So, I mean, I pray that law enforcement gets a lid on this, because it opens it up for this to continue. And I think also the last time we discussed, some of the guys in Austin, they were linked to like Eco Health Alliance at one point or something.
Yeah.
There was that level of intrigue. I don't know what's going on here. It could be coincidence, but regardless, young men, able-bodied men, and I don't know how many cases may or may not be women, but it seems like it's all entirely men, young men, this is happening to.
Yeah, and it's Honey. I think the guy's name was Honey or something like that. He was from India, and he was like, Dad was heavy up in eco health, like this whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
So it could be covers, copycats, just like you said. I do think that this MO was something, and then they're sharing it online. Like, I'll teach you how to do this.
Yeah.
Like somebody's learned this, and then it's spread out for whatever reason, whether they're doing it for occult reasons or sexual reasons, or occult sexual reasons. Somebody has learned this technique.
Let me ask you this. Have you written a second book on this as well?
No, I've done 2 documentaries, and then I did a second edition of my Smiley Face Killers book. So I added on a bunch of stuff.
Do you think that this is a group that is connected and doing this, or are there independent parties doing this, or all of the above?
I think it's all of the above. I think that there may be like
That's
a switching thing. And I think like even like Sloan Bella, I mean, her insights are really incredible. I'm not an advocate of psychics or whatever. She did a great job. She did a good job on West Memphis 3 too. I don't know if she's read what I said, but I think it's the network thing of the interest in these type of people. I mean, you look at the network of Epstein, for example. Their victims are young girls. That's their kind of central focus, is like, let's get young 15, 16-year-old girls and have sex with them. So that was the network, and spread out, and it was used for the sex and blackmail. So then think about, like, if you're interested in men and you want to find good-looking men, you're going to find them when they leave home. They're going to be independent at bars. That's like where your Serengeti is if you're a predator, right? If you're a wolf. So it just makes sense that there would be interested parties doing this. And I when my first documentary, I included that whole BDSM scene from Pulp Fiction, because I think it's something like that, where these guys are connecting. Yeah, I got flies. They got code words, like almost like a mob or something, where they are code words and things they know. And then they share it. Like pedophiles online share their CSAM, or like 764, which is kind of came out of 09A. They're clearly sharing stuff, blackmailing and selling it, believe it or not. Some of these guys are using this abuse material and selling it. So maybe something like an underground network is like that. So when saying that it's just one serial killer, I think this is a kind of like a cultural phenomenon of the darkest stripe, is really my opinion. So I think there's tens of people who know. It goes all the way up to Obama. It goes all the way up to Tafari Campbell, the same MO. And we know, I mean, it's just preposterous that Obama's straight. Everybody knows that he's either bisexual or gay.
What ended up happening with that case? Because I think we did discuss it, but it seems like it just kind of disappeared.
Nothing. He was an accidental drowning. It's over. Wash your hands. It's like just like the other SFK. There's nothing else to look into. The guy drowned. He was out having fun, and he didn't wear his leash around his ankle, and he slipped and went into another place that isn't that deep. And too bad.
And I believe that there was actually footage of him that he had posted prior at some point. Yeah. So he was
swimming. Yeah.
He was not an unaccomplished swimmer. And that story has just completely disappeared.
Yeah. What's interesting, the way the media works like that, right? So it's like you have to see this whole reality shaping as like almost like a cartel, where people are like, these are stories we want out. These are stories we don't want out. They're clearly shaping the public consciousness through certain things. Well, shows like yours and mine are like the antidote to that. But all this TV stuff, like, it's just like, well, I don't know why anybody would watch TV. You're getting dis and misinformed. You want to talk about dis and misinformation agents? Turn on ABC, CBS, NBC. It's a joke. So that's why these stories are out, because there's probably even darker thing. I mean, nobody really knows what's going on in Russia. There's mass slaughter going on. 1.5 million people in Ukraine have died in this real war that's close to World War III, but nobody in America has ever seen any battlefield footage. You have to go online and watch certain things on certain websites to actually see the slaughter. The graveyards are filled over there in the Ukraine, largely because of the U.S. government, not the U.S. people, because we didn't vote for this war. It's really a war. We're supposed to declare war. This is just one example of very important story. I mean, Gaza, too, is a perfect example. You don't see the slaughter on TV. No. It's a genocide. Yeah. And the SFK can be seen in that same light. This whole killing, like, oh, move along. Everything's fine. You're just a cow. And eventually you're going to the abattoir and we're going to tax you to death. And then you're just going to go to slaughter. It's like, why do you pay tax? Why do you pay taxes for this kind of level of government incompetence and corruption? It's incredible. And SFK is one reason. The government should have a commission already.
Agreed.
Putting these cases together, categorize. It shouldn't be the public. Putting the cases, trying to understand, trying to look into, trying to infiltrate people might be doing it, trying to figure out underground. I mean, they have incredible resources. Some of these governmental agencies, they get like $50 billion a year. And I got a guy like me just kind of grinding my way through, trying to pay rent in over expensive California. And you've got these huge things that are just like, no, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself and blah, 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 blah. It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's interesting that you bring up Jeffrey Epstein, because that was going through my head. It's like, look, think about the level of goodwill it would generate for the U.S. government and law enforcement to state, look, we are undertaking an effort to try to figure this out. We don't know what it is. We do have the possibility that there is this thing going on that's been called the Smiley Face Killers. I mean, I think it would engender a great deal of public support, because look, when Kash Patel came out the other day and Dan Bongino, both of whom I had high hopes for initially, came out and said that, Epstein killed himself, which I personally still do not believe. Look at how that exploded in their faces, because nobody believes that. And if you listen, I don't know if you'll find the answer, but with the Smiley Face Killer thing, if you at least make a public effort to try to figure it out and give it the space that it needs within the media, you will engender support.
I agree. Like, why aren't you doing that? The whole Epstein file release was a total joke, Mike.
Yeah,
it was a complete freaking joke. It was almost like done by like a ninth grader would figure it out with stupid binders and known intel agents sitting at this table. And then all these like alt influencers looking stupid is like dumber than dirt, like running out of the White House. Like, wow, this is incredible. It shows you how deep it goes, because I think that the entire political group, from both sides, the totality of our political class
100%
would be implicated. And that would be a good thing, because then they could all be swept off into jail, which all of them are criminal. Like, the default is criminality. They're all stealing money through their friends or over taxes or through laundering it back through Ukraine. They need to be swept off so we can survive. It's really a matter of survival, because a lot of these kids who are dead from this SFK because these politicians are corrupt and stupid and evil, frankly, because they should be involved in it. That's your job. That's why you you're involved in law enforcement or the law. So do your job and put this stuff together. I mean, it's just like people have to get back to just the basics: rule of law, enforce the law. And if you're not doing it, like, it is interesting. It's almost like Bongino and Patel, they go into Mordor and then they become another one of the ring wraiths. They get rid of one of the old ring wraiths and then they become and start lying to the public again. Like, what do you think we voted for you for? Like, you're supposed to stop the war. This SFK is happening in the context of great corruption. I'll just leave it at that.
It is a splintering of society. Everybody feels under great pressure right now. A lot of people are wondering, God, what happens now? I have no power. And all I would say is, friends, seriously, please, when you go out and listen, we all like to see our friends and go, just please be aware of your surroundings at all times. And please do not drift off alone, because this is very real and it's ongoing. There's no end in sight. To the families of the victims and deceased, our heart goes out to you, and we will try to keep this in front of people until it's resolved.
Amen. I mean, the predators are out there. There are people who self-identify as wolves. They are proud of it. And the people who aren't like that, they don't understand. Like, there are people who, like Jeffrey Dahmer, like he's going out drugging people.
Yes.
And doing horrible things. And this is kind of what, to me, that's within this context, is drugging. And some of these guys are very intelligent. These are like premeditated, thought about type crimes.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't like crimes of passion or jealousy or rage. This is a different type of crime. I always go back to think of this guy from Manchester. His name was Reynard Sanaga. He waited until 2 a.m. That's when he went out. So he would just take a nap and wait 2 a.m. because all the drunks would come out of the bars. That was his goal. Yay. And so they're in a vulnerable state. So going back to your point, stick together, maybe go leave the bar a little early and go home and have a couple drinks at home, like do something safe. Like we're not in a really safe environment in this country anymore. It's not what it used to be.
It's a sad state of affairs. William, thank you so much for the work that you do. And thank you, Jim Smith, for the work that you do, and all of the people who are continuing to try to push this story out so that we can figure out what it is. And to the people in Austin, please, city of Austin, please, state of Texas, stand up, do your jobs, make this more safe for your citizens, for those who want to come there. There's a lot of good things in Austin. I do not, by any stretch of the imagination, think it's all bad. But something has got to be done, and the secret has got to be spoken.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michael Parker. Reach out, get Smiley Face Killers by William Ramsey. Listen to his podcast, William Ramsey Investigates. I appreciate William's time. I appreciate your time. And if you could do me a favor and hit a like, hit a subscribe, it would mean the world to me. And share this with your friends and family, and keep listening to myself and William. We're trying to do what we can to get these stories out, and we appreciate you. Until next time, keep your heart and your mind open. Peace.